Hey guys! Tonight we're about to step into the heart of one of the most famous mysteries of the ancient world, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Picture it, a vast, majestic city wrapped in golden sun and nestled beside the winding Euphrates River. Now, in your mind, you're standing at the edge of the legendary gardens, lush greenery climbing toward the heavens, waterfalls cascading down towering terraces. It's so vibrant you almost forget this garden, one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, may not even have existed. This mythical garden, created sometime around the 6th century BCE, remains one of the most tantalizing riddles in history. People have been obsessed with it for thousands of years. For some, it's a symbol of ancient genius, an Eden-like paradise in the middle of the arid Mesopotamian landscape. For others, it's a brilliant fabrication, a tale woven by poets and storytellers to elevate Babylon's fame. The big question, did the Hanging Gardens really exist, or was it just the stuff of legend? Some say yes, and others argue no. Historians still debate its very existence, with some suggesting the gardens were built in a different city altogether, while others believe they were real but have simply been lost to time. To get a sense of what the gardens would have been like, imagine a city so ancient that everything about it is larger than life. A city where rulers and poets alike wove tales of grandeur. You're standing in Babylon, one of the most powerful cities in the ancient world, under the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar II. Everything around you seems to shimmer with possibility, and the Hanging Gardens were supposed to be the crowning jewel of this great empire. The sound of rushing water fills your ears, blending with the distant hum of the city's life. And yet, despite the descriptions of these fantastic gardens, we are left with only fragments, scattered clues, and echoes from ancient texts to guide us. While the grand image of cascading green terraces still sparkles in the popular imagination, the actual evidence remains elusive. No physical traces of the gardens have been found. Not a single stone, not a shard of the famed irrigation system. There is no definitive archaeological proof that this garden ever graced the banks of the Euphrates, despite the vivid descriptions provided by ancient writers. It's strange, really. For a wonder so magnificent, you'd expect something concrete, but all that remains is a mystery. Historians have long debated whether this garden was truly a part of Nebuchadnezzar II's legacy, or whether it existed in an entirely different form or location. Did it really exist in Babylon, or was it another creation altogether, lost to the sands of time? Historians still argue whether the gardens were built by Nebuchadnezzar for his wife, Amytis of Media, who missed the lush greenery of her homeland. Some ancient accounts describe a monumental garden of enormous scale, with trees and plants flourishing on massive terraces. The description is of a garden so vast it could have easily been confused with a small forest. Ancient texts recount its grandeur in a way that made it sound like a living oasis, a vertical wonder, with water flowing in a system of channels, keeping the plants alive and vibrant. But even with all this, the tangible evidence to prove its existence simply doesn't surface. The question you may be asking now is, what's so compelling about these gardens, even if they may have never been real? Well, the legend of the Hanging Gardens is important because it represents the very essence of ancient ambition. Babylon was a city of power, wealth, and culture, and the gardens embodied those ideals. Even if they never existed in the way the stories describe, their idea, their dream, lingered through history. Imagine a city at the height of its glory, a king doing everything he could to bring joy to his queen, constructing an enormous green paradise for her in the middle of a desert with the architectural ingenuity to bring water up to such great heights. This fascination with the Hanging Gardens has persisted throughout the ages because they represent a melding of human creativity and nature. The sheer audacity of their design and purpose, if they were ever built, speaks to a time when mankind still believed they could master the forces of nature. But why is it that we, as modern humans, continue to be so enchanted by a garden that may never have existed? Perhaps it's because the idea itself evokes something larger than life, a kingdom that understood the delicate balance between human desire and the world around them. Or perhaps we're drawn to the possibility of creating beauty where there seems to be none, as if to say that humans are capable of miraculous feats in the most inhospitable places. One of the most remarkable aspects of the gardens is the sense of wonder they continue to inspire. From the dusty scrolls of ancient texts to the pages of modern books and films, the gardens of Babylon capture the imagination. Even if we can never visit them in person, we can still dream about them. It's as if the very existence of these gardens is part of the human spirit, the desire to create something that transcends time and place, to leave a mark on the world that is so profound that it can withstand the erosion of centuries. There's a lesson in all of this, isn't there? Maybe it's not about whether the gardens ever existed or not. Maybe it's about the imagination that has kept them alive in our collective consciousness. Maybe it's about the fact that even today we still try to replicate their grandeur in our urban environments, from the green spaces we design to the vertical gardens and green roofs of modern cities. In a way, the spirit of Babylon's Hanging Gardens is alive today, inspiring future generations to build not just for function, but for beauty and wonder as well. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. To understand the true mystery of the Hanging Gardens, we have to go back, way back, to the rise of the Babylonians. Picture the city of Babylon itself, its streets alive with traders, farmers, and craftsmen, its sky filled with the hum of progress. The city is growing, expanding, its rulers constantly seeking ways to leave their mark. And here, at the height of this empire, Nebuchadnezzar II steps into the spotlight. He's not just any king. He's a ruler whose name will echo through the annals of history. It's during his reign that the tale of the Hanging Gardens takes root. But was it love that inspired him, or was it his desire to cement Babylon's greatness forever? As you stand in the heart of ancient Babylon, surrounded by towering walls that stretch as far as your eyes can see, the air is thick with history. The sun casts its warm glow over the city, its rays glinting off the intricate mosaics and impressive ziggurats that rise above you. It's here, in this bustling city, that the Hanging Gardens are said to have been created, a monumental gift from King Nebuchadnezzar II to his queen, Amytis of Media. Nebuchadnezzar II wasn't just any ruler. He was the king who took Babylon from a relatively small kingdom to the height of its power, turning it into one of the most influential empires of the ancient world. His reign, lasting from 605 BCE to 562 BCE, was marked by military conquest, territorial expansion, and a love for grand architectural projects. As the king, Nebuchadnezzar had access to the wealth and resources of one of the most powerful empires of the time, and he wasn't shy about using it to create lasting monuments to his own greatness. The grand buildings, roads, and temples were his way of immortalizing his reign, ensuring that his name would live on for centuries, even millennia. But perhaps the most famous of all his creations, the one that still captures the imagination of people today, was the Hanging Gardens. They are said to have been built for his queen, Amytis of Media, who was originally from Media, an ancient kingdom in what is now Iran. The queen, we're told, missed the lush, green mountains of her homeland. She longed for the greenery of her native land, which stood in stark contrast to the arid, desert-like landscape of Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar, ever the devoted husband, is said to have constructed the Hanging Gardens to alleviate her homesickness, creating a garden so breathtaking that it could rival the natural beauty of her mountains. But let's pause for a moment. You might be wondering, could it have been that simple? Was this all just a romantic gesture from a lovesick king, or was there something more to it? Historians still argue whether the gardens were built primarily as a gift for Amytis, or if Nebuchadnezzar had larger political motives. Could this magnificent garden have been a symbol of Babylon's power, a way for Nebuchadnezzar to flaunt his wealth and capabilities to other kingdoms? Some suggest that the gardens were designed to project Babylon's dominance over nature itself. By creating such a lush and life-giving space in the heart of the desert, the gardens may have served as a symbol of Babylon's greatness, a reflection of the king's ability to conquer even the harshest environments. Regardless of the true motivation behind their creation, the Hanging Gardens were undoubtedly a sight to behold. Imagine stepping into a world that blends the art of landscaping with the marvels of engineering. As you walk through the gardens, you notice how the plants seem to grow from the very walls, the leaves rich and green against the golden backdrop of the city. The air is filled with the sweet scent of flowers, the sound of water trickling from one tier to the next. The gardens are said to have been made up of multiple terraces, each one filled with different varieties of trees, shrubs, and vines. The sight of greenery reaching toward the sky, supported by massive stone pillars, would have been unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. It's easy to see why the gardens would come to be considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. But as stunning as the gardens may have been, the challenge of creating such a wonder in the middle of the desert would have been immense. After all, Babylon sits in a region where rainfall is scarce and the earth is parched. How could such a lush paradise be maintained in such an inhospitable environment? Historians still argue how Nebuchadnezzar and his engineers managed to create this miracle. The most widely accepted theory is that the gardens were irrigated by an ingenious system of water transportation, possibly using the Euphrates River, which flowed through the heart of the city. Some ancient texts suggest that the water was pumped to the upper levels of the gardens using an early form of screw pump, an innovation attributed to the Greek engineer Archimedes. Other accounts mention an elaborate system of aqueducts and channels that carried water to the top of the gardens, where it could then flow down through the various levels, nourishing the plants below. This method of irrigation would have been an engineering feat, requiring advanced knowledge of hydraulics, and it's one of the reasons the gardens remain so captivating to historians. While there's no concrete evidence to support the existence of such a system in Babylon, it is a theory that makes sense given the resources available at the time. And despite the lack of physical evidence, many still cling to the idea that the gardens were real, built with cutting-edge technology that seemed almost too advanced for its time. But what about the people who lived in Babylon? What was it like to experience this magnificent creation in person? Imagine the wonder of stepping into the gardens, leaving behind the noise of the city and the heat of the desert, and finding yourself surrounded by an oasis of color and life. The air would be cool and damp, the scent of flowers and fresh greenery mingling with the faint scent of earth and water. The sound of water cascading down the terraces would drown out the noise of the outside world, leaving you in a serene, almost otherworldly state. You might find yourself wandering through the various levels of the gardens, marveling at the different plants that grow in every direction. The sound of birds would fill the air, their calls echoing off the stone pillars. The lush environment would seem to defy the desert that surrounds it, creating a sense of peace and tranquility in the midst of a harsh world. But of course, this is all speculation. We can never truly know what the gardens were like, or if they even existed at all. Many historians and archaeologists believe the gardens were a fantasy created by later generations, a myth passed down through the centuries. There are no definitive archaeological remains of the gardens, no evidence of their existence beyond the accounts written by ancient historians and poets. Some even suggest that the Hanging Gardens were never in Babylon at all, but were instead located in Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire, which Nebuchadnezzar may have admired. This theory, though intriguing, has not been proven, and the garden's true location remains one of history's greatest mysteries. In the end, whether they were real or not, the story of the Hanging Gardens endures. Their legend has been passed down through the ages, and even today we continue to dream of what they might have looked like. The gardens are more than just an architectural wonder. They represent the human desire to create beauty and harmony, even in the most unlikely places. They remind us of the power of imagination and innovation, and of the legacy that one ruler left behind, whether through grand architectural feats or the sheer wonder of a myth that still captures our hearts. As you continue your journey through the heart of ancient Babylon, the magnificence of the city around you becomes even clearer. Nebuchadnezzar II's Babylon was a kingdom defined by its ambition and grandeur. The Hanging Gardens, with their lush green terraces and cascading waters, were not just a symbol of his devotion to his queen, but also a testament to his reign, a reign that stretched across vast territories from Mesopotamia to the Levant. His empire was a force to be reckoned with, and every inch of it seemed to be a celebration of Babylon's divine favor. In your mind's eye, you can almost see the great city laid out before you, the ziggurats towering over the landscape, their steps rising up toward the heavens, a tangible symbol of Babylon's connection to the gods. You notice the Ishtar Gate, the city's majestic entrance, decorated with blue-glazed tiles depicting mythical creatures. These creations were not merely for beauty, they were a declaration of the king's power, his ability to mold the physical world to his will. Nebuchadnezzar's city was not just a political center, but a living canvas of divine authority and human ingenuity. It was the perfect backdrop for a garden as fantastical as the one he envisioned for his queen. But what was the purpose of such opulence? What did Nebuchadnezzar hope to achieve by constructing such an extraordinary garden? Historians still debate the deeper meaning behind the gardens and whether they were purely an act of love for his queen or a carefully orchestrated political move. Some suggest that the Hanging Gardens were a way for Nebuchadnezzar to project his power to the surrounding kingdoms. He had already established Babylon as a military and cultural force, but the creation of the gardens would have sent a clear message. Babylon could not only conquer lands, but also tame the forces of nature itself. The gardens would have been a living testament to the king's unmatched ability to harness the natural world. Another theory holds that the gardens served a more practical purpose. Babylon, with its grand architecture and bustling markets, was a thriving metropolis, but it was also located in a region that was prone to extreme heat and scarce rainfall. To create an oasis in the middle of the desert was no small feat. The Hanging Gardens could have been more than just a beautiful landscape. They might have been an early attempt at urban agriculture, a way of ensuring the city's food supply could be sustained even in the harshest conditions. By cultivating a wide variety of plants and trees in the gardens, the king may have been providing for both the aesthetic and nutritional needs of his people. In this sense, the gardens would have been a symbol of both luxury and survival, a blend of beauty and practicality that reflected the complexity of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. But let's not get lost in theories just yet. You're standing in the gardens, taking it all in. The vibrant colors of flowers and fruit trees surround you, and the sound of water flows gently through the air. As you walk, you catch glimpses of Babylon's bustling streets in the distance. The city is alive with activity. Traders from distant lands haggling in the markets, soldiers marching through the gates, and priests offering prayers to the gods. Despite the noise of the city, the gardens offer a moment of peace, a reprieve from the world's chaos. The contrast is striking, and you can't help but be awestruck by how such an oasis could exist in the midst of such a harsh environment. The engineering marvel that made the gardens possible is another source of fascination. The ancient texts that describe the gardens mention elaborate irrigation systems that brought water from the Euphrates River to the upper levels of the gardens. This system would have been an incredible feat, especially given the technological limitations of the time. Some ancient accounts suggest that water was pumped up to the gardens using a kind of screw pump, an invention attributed to the Greek engineer Archimedes, although this was centuries after Nebuchadnezzar's time. Others believe that an intricate system of channels and aqueducts was used to transport water, much like the systems employed by the ancient Romans. The idea that such a system could have been used in Babylon is both impressive and perplexing. How did a civilization without modern technology manage to create such a complex and functional irrigation network? Despite the lack of archaeological evidence confirming the exact methods used, it's clear that the gardens required an immense amount of planning and resources. Historians still argue whether the gardens were built using a system of arches supported by columns, or if they were suspended in the air by a series of ropes and pulleys. Some even suggest that the gardens might have been constructed on a massive terrace, with each level supported by thick walls made from brick or stone. Whatever the method, the sheer scale of the project would have required a tremendous amount of labor, and it's likely that thousands of workers were involved in the creation of the gardens. But let's take a moment to think about the workers themselves. Imagine being one of those laborers tasked with bringing this grand vision to life. It's hard to fathom the amount of work that must have gone into constructing such a massive structure, especially in an era where there were no cranes or modern machinery. Every stone had to be carefully cut, each column erected by hand. You can almost hear the sounds of hammers striking stone, the shouts of workers coordinating their efforts. And then there's the water.
an element so essential to the survival of the gardens that it would have been carefully managed and controlled, flowing up through the channels and pouring down over the terraces like a living river. The workers who built the gardens were likely slaves or prisoners of war, as was common in ancient Babylon. Their labor was not just a matter of physical exertion, but also of survival. To work on such a project would have been to participate in something larger than oneself, to be part of a grand vision that would forever be associated with the name of Nebuchadnezzar. It's possible that they worked for months, even years, to complete the gardens, never knowing if their efforts would ever be appreciated, or if the gardens would stand the test of time. And yet, even today, their work is remembered, not just in the stories of the Hanging Gardens, but in the legacy of ancient Babylon itself. While the exact location of the gardens is still a mystery, there are many who believe that the gardens were situated near the royal palace. Imagine standing on the grounds of the palace, overlooking the gardens as they stretch out before you. From this vantage point, you would have been able to see the entire city of Babylon, with its impressive walls, its bustling markets, and its towering ziggurats. It would have been a breathtaking sight, a city so grand that it could not be contained by the desert. The gardens, in their beauty and complexity, would have been a reflection of everything Babylon stood for: power, wealth, and an unshakable connection to the divine. But as you walk through the gardens, admiring their beauty and complexity, you can't help but wonder how something so magnificent could simply disappear from history. Why is it that, despite all the records and descriptions, there's no physical evidence of the gardens? Were they destroyed by warfare, or did they simply fade away with time, their legacy reduced to myth? Historians still debate this, but one thing is certain: the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, whether real or imagined, have left a lasting mark on the world. Their story continues to inspire awe, and their legend lives on, even if we may never know the full truth about their existence.
The mystery of the Hanging Gardens deepens as you stand amidst the lush greenery, allowing your imagination to wander back to ancient times. It's a place where the lines between reality and myth blur, and no one can say with absolute certainty whether the gardens were ever truly built or if they are merely a fantastical creation of ancient poets and historians. One thing is for sure: the story of the Hanging Gardens has captured the imagination of people for centuries, inspiring awe, wonder, and speculation. Even today, we find ourselves yearning to understand their origins and their ultimate fate. While the grand design of the gardens may seem to live on in the minds of those who dream of it, the question remains: how did such a remarkable structure come to be? What kind of engineering marvels would have been necessary to build this vertical paradise in the midst of a desert? Historians still argue about the specifics of the garden's construction, and over time, different theories have emerged, each trying to explain how such an extraordinary feat could have been accomplished without modern tools or technology. Some believe that the gardens were an architectural innovation of the highest order, employing advanced hydraulic systems and techniques that were far ahead of their time. Others suggest that the gardens may have been far simpler than we've imagined, with a much less sophisticated system that was nonetheless effective in creating the lush environment that the texts describe. Let's start with the most commonly accepted theory about the garden's construction: the irrigation system. Historians agree that for the gardens to flourish in Babylon, an innovative and reliable method of water transportation would have been absolutely essential. The city of Babylon itself sits on the banks of the Euphrates River, but water alone would not have been enough to sustain the gardens, especially given the scale of the project. The gardens, as described in ancient texts, were multi-tiered, with each level containing an abundance of trees, flowers, and shrubs. To keep these plants alive, water would have had to be brought up to the highest levels of the gardens, a feat that would have required a sophisticated system of irrigation. One theory that has been widely discussed is the use of an early form of the screw pump, an invention attributed to the Greek engineer Archimedes. The screw pump, which is essentially a spiral tube that carries water as it is rotated, would have allowed the Babylonians to lift water from the Euphrates and channel it into the gardens. While Archimedes lived centuries after the Hanging Gardens are believed to have been built, some historians believe that similar devices may have been used in Babylon. The challenge, of course, is that there is no concrete evidence to support this idea. Some argue that the screw pump was not yet in use in Babylon, while others suggest that the technique could have been introduced later. Nevertheless, the concept of an innovative water lifting system remains central to many theories about the gardens. Another possible method of irrigation could have been a system of aqueducts and channels, similar to those used by the ancient Romans. These aqueducts, which were often built to carry water from distant sources to cities, could have been employed to bring water to the gardens. If this theory is correct, then it suggests that Babylonian engineers had developed an advanced understanding of water management long before the Romans. These aqueducts would have had to be carefully constructed to prevent leaks and ensure that water flowed efficiently from the river to the highest levels of the gardens. The sheer scale of such a project would have required significant resources, manpower, and ingenuity, and it's likely that the construction of the gardens took years, if not decades, to complete. However, the fact remains that no archaeological evidence has been found to confirm the existence of these irrigation systems. Despite detailed descriptions of the gardens in ancient texts, no traces of the gardens themselves have ever been discovered in Babylon. Some archaeologists have suggested that the gardens may have been destroyed over time, either through natural disasters, war, or the ravages of time. Others believe that the gardens may have been located elsewhere, perhaps even in the city of Nineveh, which was the capital of the Assyrian Empire, which was ruled several generations before Nebuchadnezzar. The idea that the Hanging Gardens were not in Babylon, but in Nineveh, has gained traction in recent years, but it remains an open question. Historians still debate the location of the gardens, and the search for evidence continues. So where does that leave us? Standing in the middle of a mystery, of course. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the Hanging Gardens is not just their possible existence or their architectural design, but the fact that we continue to search for them, even today. Every excavation of ancient Babylon, every new discovery in Mesopotamia is met with a renewed hope that we might uncover the truth behind the gardens. Whether they were built or not, whether they were in Babylon or Nineveh, the allure of the Hanging Gardens endures. They are more than just a historical curiosity. They are a symbol of human ingenuity, ambition, and the desire to create something beautiful and lasting. Even if the gardens were never built, they represent an ideal, an expression of a king's love for his queen, and a city's desire to showcase its power and prosperity. The idea of creating a lush, green oasis in the middle of the desert speaks to something deeper within us, a yearning to conquer nature, to make the impossible possible, and to leave behind a legacy that will stand the test of time. In many ways, the gardens exist not just as a physical monument, but as a metaphor for the human spirit, forever striving, forever dreaming.
As you stand in the imagined shade of the Hanging Gardens, you can't help but marvel at the vision that brought them to life, whether in reality or in legend. The story of Nebuchadnezzar's creation continues to capture the imagination, and perhaps it always will. The gardens, whether real or imagined, are a testament to the lasting power of human creativity. They show us that even in the face of uncertainty and doubt, the human desire to create beauty and wonder remains unshaken. And perhaps in some small way, the Hanging Gardens live on in the green spaces, parks, and gardens that we create today, each one a nod to the grand vision of a king who dreamed of making the desert bloom.
As you step deeper into the heart of this ancient mystery, one question lingers in the air. How did such a marvel disappear? The idea of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon is so deeply ingrained in our collective imagination that it's almost difficult to conceive that they could have ever been lost to time. And yet, the more you think about it, the more puzzling it becomes. Why, despite all the grandeur, despite the meticulous engineering, is there no concrete evidence of the gardens? Could something so extraordinary just vanish? The answer may lie in the destructive forces that ravaged the ancient world. Babylon, like so many other great civilizations, was no stranger to warfare. Throughout its history, the city faced a series of invasions and battles that threatened to tear it apart. Nebuchadnezzar's reign marked a period of immense prosperity, but after his death, the kingdom would eventually crumble. Over time, Babylon was invaded by the Persians and later the Greeks, and each conqueror left their mark on the city. It's possible that the gardens, if they existed in the first place, could have been destroyed during these periods of conflict. One particularly devastating event occurred in 539 BCE when the Persian king Cyrus the Great conquered Babylon. The Persian Empire was known for its aggressive expansion, and the fall of Babylon was no exception. The city, once a center of culture and power, fell into the hands of an entirely new civilization, and many of its most notable structures were either looted or abandoned. Could the Hanging Gardens have been lost in the chaos of war? Perhaps, but the absence of physical evidence raises more questions than answers. But what if the gardens didn't disappear because of war, but because of time itself? The desert, over thousands of years, can slowly erase everything in its path. The shifting sands of Mesopotamia could have buried the gardens, hiding them from the world forever. Some researchers have even suggested that the gardens may have been destroyed by flooding, as the Euphrates River periodically overflowed its banks, washing away anything in its path. While this is a plausible theory, there's still no definitive evidence to support it. If the gardens were indeed washed away by the river, it's likely that their remains would have been found by now. But so far, all that remains are ancient texts and a handful of descriptions that may or may not be accurate. Another theory is that the gardens may have simply fallen into disrepair over time. Ancient cities, no matter how grand, are not immune to the ravages of nature and neglect. Without proper maintenance, even the most advanced irrigation systems can fail. If the water supply to the gardens was cut off, or if the engineering that supported the terraces began to deteriorate, it's possible that the gardens gradually withered and died. This would explain why no evidence has been found. The gardens may have simply faded from existence, leaving behind no trace but a whisper of their former beauty. It's also worth considering that the gardens might not have been destroyed at all. What if they were simply forgotten? Ancient history is filled with instances of once great monuments and structures being abandoned or left to decay. In some cases, entire cities have been swallowed up by the sands, only to be rediscovered centuries later. It's possible that the gardens were simply forgotten by the people who came after Nebuchadnezzar, and their memory faded with the passage of time.
The fact that no definitive archaeological evidence has been found could suggest that the gardens were never as widely recognized in later centuries as they were in Nebuchadnezzar's time. While there are countless theories about the garden's demise, there's still no answer that satisfies everyone. Some believe that the gardens were destroyed in an ancient conflict, while others argue that they were simply forgotten or left to decay. Historians and archaeologists continued to search for clues, but the truth remains elusive. The gardens may have been destroyed, buried, or forgotten, but the legend of their beauty and grandeur persists, passed down through the centuries. And in a way, perhaps that's the true fitting end to the story of the Hanging Gardens, a legend that lives on in the imagination, a mystery that continues to inspire wonder and awe. Even if the gardens themselves no longer exist, their influence can still be seen in the world today. The idea of creating lush, vertical gardens in urban environments has become a symbol of innovation and sustainability. Vertical gardens, or green walls, have been implemented in cities around the world, from Paris to Singapore. These modern gardens, often built on the sides of buildings or in abandoned spaces, are a nod to the ancient vision of the Hanging Gardens, a way of bringing nature into the heart of the city, creating oases in the midst of concrete jungles. The Gardens of Babylon, whether real or imagined, have inspired countless generations to think outside the box when it comes to integrating nature into urban environments. As you stand in this imagined version of the Hanging Gardens, surrounded by the rich colors and sounds of life, you can't help but feel the weight of history pressing in on you. The gardens may have vanished, but their legacy remains, a symbol of the enduring human desire to create beauty and wonder no matter the obstacles. Whether they were real or not, the gardens continued to speak to us, reminding us of the power of imagination and the endless possibilities of human creativity. And perhaps in a strange way, this is where the true magic of the Hanging Gardens lies. They may have disappeared from the physical world, but they have never truly left us. They live on in our dreams, in our modern gardens, and in our desire to push the boundaries of what is possible. The legacy of the Hanging Gardens is not just in the stone and soil of ancient Babylon, but in the endless ways in which we continue to be inspired by them.
As the day begins to fade and the last rays of the sun cast long shadows over the imagined garden before you, you begin to appreciate the true depth of Babylon's grandeur. You've already wandered through the lush terraces, admired the vastness of the gardens, and wondered about their creation. But now you find yourself thinking about the world beyond the garden walls. Babylon, as magnificent as it was not just known for its stunning gardens. The city itself was a marvel of architecture and urban design, a true reflection of the might and ambition of Nebuchadnezzar II. It was a city of enormous wealth, immense power, and intellectual achievement. Babylon was a city of firsts. It was home to some of the most advanced engineering, art, and science of the ancient world. Its massive walls were the stuff of legend, stretching for miles and towering high above the Euphrates River. The Ishtar Gate, with its brilliantly glazed blue tiles and depictions of lions, dragons, and bulls, stood as a testament to the city's wealth and cultural sophistication. But it was not just the gates and walls that made Babylon such a remarkable place. The city was a thriving hub of trade, culture, and innovation. Babylonian merchants brought goods from as far as Egypt, India, and Persia, and the streets of Babylon bustled with life, from traders hawking their wares to scholars debating the great ideas of the day. At the heart of this bustling metropolis stood the royal palace, where Nebuchadnezzar himself resided. From this palace he could gaze upon the immense city that he had built, a city so grand that it seemed almost untouchable. It was within the walls of this palace that the legend of the Hanging Gardens was born.
In fact, some ancient accounts suggest that the gardens were constructed in connection with the royal palace itself, providing Nebuchadnezzar with an exclusive retreat, a private sanctuary where he could escape the pressures of ruling a vast empire. But why a garden? Why not simply create a magnificent palace or temple? Historians still debate the deeper meaning behind the creation of the Hanging Gardens. Some argue that Nebuchadnezzar's decision to build such an extravagant garden was an attempt to reflect the divine nature of his rule. The ancient Babylonians believed that their kings were chosen by the gods, and Nebuchadnezzar may have seen the gardens as a way to demonstrate that his reign was favored by the heavens. After all, the very act of bringing life to the desert could have been seen as a reflection of divine power, a manifestation of the king's ability to command nature itself. But others believed that the gardens were more about human achievement than divine favor. In an empire as powerful as Babylon, the king's ability to construct such a wonder would have been a testament to his mastery over both the natural world and the city itself. By building a vertical garden in the middle of a desert, Nebuchadnezzar may have been making a statement about his dominance over the forces of nature. This was not just an act of love for his queen, it was also a demonstration of his empire's unrivaled power and technological prowess. With the gardens, Nebuchadnezzar could show that Babylon could not only conquer lands, but could also conquer nature itself. Of course, the idea of conquering nature, of creating beauty in the most inhospitable of environments, is a theme that still resonates with us today. We may not be building towering gardens in the deserts of Mesopotamia, but the modern world is filled with examples of human ingenuity that seek to transform the natural environment. From skyscrapers that touch the clouds to vertical farms that grow food in the heart of cities, we are still attempting to conquer nature in ways that echo the ambitions of Nebuchadnezzar. The idea of creating lush green spaces in the midst of urban environments is a modern-day version of the Hanging Gardens, a reminder that the spirit of Babylon lives on in our desire to shape the world around us. As you stand at the edge of the garden once more, taking in the view of the imagined city stretching out before you, it's easy to get lost in the mystery of it all. Did the gardens ever exist? Or were they simply a beautiful fantasy, a tale passed down through the ages to inspire wonder? The truth remains elusive. But what you do know is that the story of the Hanging Gardens, whether real or not, speaks to something timeless within us, the desire to create, to innovate, and to leave a lasting legacy. The gardens may have disappeared from the physical world, but their story lives on, inspiring new generations to dream big and think beyond the limits of what seems possible. Even in the absence of definitive evidence, the gardens continue to capture our imagination. They remind us that even in a world that can often feel constrained by the harsh realities of life, there is always room for beauty, wonder, and the pursuit of the extraordinary. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, though long gone, remain a testament to the enduring power of human creativity and to the belief that even in the harshest of environments, beauty can bloom. As the sun sinks lower beneath the horizon, the fading light dances over the cityscape, and you reflect on the legacy of Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon. The Hanging Gardens are, in a way, a glimpse into a forgotten world, one where human ambition knew no bounds. But while the gardens themselves remain elusive, their legacy transcends time, and their myth continues to echo through history. Even today, we find ourselves drawn to the idea of transforming the harshest environments into places of beauty, much like Nebuchadnezzar did in his day. Now, as you stand back and consider the garden's place in the broader context of ancient civilization, it becomes clear that the gardens were not an isolated phenomenon. Babylon was a city full of wonders, each one a testament to the extraordinary ingenuity of its people. But it wasn't just the gardens that made Babylon such a marvel. The city itself was an architectural and cultural wonder, one that rivaled any other in the ancient world. And it was in the midst of this city that Nebuchadnezzar sought to create something not just functional, but breathtakingly beautiful, a gift to his queen and a symbol of his reign. While the gardens were one of the most remarkable elements of Babylon, they were just the tip of the iceberg. The city was home to a vast array of architectural marvels, each one showcasing the technological advancements of its time. The Ishtar Gate, perhaps the most famous of all Babylonian structures, was an ornate entrance to the city, adorned with rows of blue-glazed bricks depicting lions, dragons, and bulls, symbols of the power of Babylon. These intricate tiles, some of which still exist in the Pergamon Museum in Berlin, have become iconic representations of the city. Standing at the Ishtar Gate, you can almost imagine the processions that once passed through it, merchants, dignitaries, and soldiers, all entering Babylon to pay homage to its splendor. The grandeur of the Ishtar Gate was matched by that of the city's walls, which were said to be so thick and strong that chariots could race along their tops. These massive walls, built of mud brick and reinforced by an advanced system of arches, served both as a defensive mechanism and a symbol of Babylon's dominance. They were part of a larger, ambitious project that sought to make Babylon one of the most fortified cities in the ancient world. Nebuchadnezzar's success in building such formidable walls and gates was not just a matter of military strategy, it was also about reinforcing his image as a ruler who could protect and preserve his city, his empire, and his vision for the future. And then there were the ziggurats, enormous stepped towers that rose into the sky, each one dedicated to a different god. The most famous of these was the Etemenanke ziggurat, a colossal structure that may have been the inspiration for the biblical Tower of Babel. Its towering height and massive size were a testament to the Babylonians' religious devotion and their desire to reach for the heavens. To stand at the base of such a monument would have been awe-inspiring, especially knowing that it was built by hand, stone by stone, without the modern machinery we take for granted today. The ziggurats were not just religious structures, they were statements of human ambition, designed to show that man could build toward the divine. But the gardens, the gardens. Despite the lack of physical evidence, the gardens remain at the center of the story of Babylon's grandeur. Their ability to capture the imagination and live on in myth, even in the absence of any concrete proof, is a testament to the enduring power of human creativity. Imagine the contrast between the harsh, arid landscape of the surrounding desert and the lush greenery of the gardens, their terraces rising high above the city. It must have been a sight to behold, something that defied the very laws of nature. The gardens, like all of Babylon's wonders, were a manifestation of the king's will, an attempt to bring beauty and life to a world that seemed devoid of both. Historians still debate the practical reasons for the gardens' creation, as well as their symbolic significance. Some argue that the gardens were more than just an aesthetic feat. They may have also served as an early attempt to address the challenges of urban living in a harsh climate. In an age before modern irrigation systems, Babylon was a city surrounded by the relentless heat of the desert. By creating the gardens, Nebuchadnezzar may have been seeking to improve the city's agricultural output, or simply to provide a cool, shaded retreat for the royal family and their guests. It's possible that the gardens were a combination of beauty and practicality, a space that served both aesthetic and functional purposes. But even if they did have practical purposes, it's clear that the gardens were also meant to convey something grander, something that transcended mere utility. The gardens were a symbol of Babylon's power and prosperity, a way for Nebuchadnezzar to showcase not only his ability to control nature, but also his status as a divine ruler. They were, in a sense, an earthly representation of heaven, a place where the gods and humanity could coexist in perfect harmony. This is what made the Hanging Gardens of Babylon so extraordinary. They were not just a feat of engineering, they were a vision of an idealized world. As you wander through the gardens in your mind's eye, you can almost feel the coolness of the shade, the vibrancy of the colors, the gentle sound of water flowing over the terraces. The gardens, in a way, are an expression of the best that humanity can achieve. They remind us of what is possible when we dare to dream big and defy the limits of what seems possible. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, whether real or imagined, are a lasting testament to the power of human creativity, to our ability to create something beautiful and enduring, even in the most unlikely of places. And though the gardens themselves may be lost to history, their legacy continues to inspire us. Today, we still seek to create beauty in the world, in our cities, in our homes, and in our gardens. Vertical gardens, green roofs, and urban parks are just a few examples of how the spirit of the Hanging Gardens lives on in modern times. And so, as the ancient city of Babylon fades into the past, the gardens, in all their imagined glory, continued to inspire us to create something extraordinary, something that will last long after we're gone.
As you step away from the imagined beauty of the Hanging Gardens, the world of ancient Babylon begins to fade from view. Yet the mystique of this ancient wonder lingers, as if the very idea of it still casts its shadow over us. Even though centuries have passed and the garden itself may have been lost, the spirit of the Hanging Gardens lives on in the hearts of those who dream of creating something greater than themselves. The gardens are more than just a symbol of an ancient civilization. They represent the perennial human desire to make the impossible possible, to transform the mundane into the extraordinary. Looking back on everything you've explored, the Hanging Gardens have become a window into a distant past, a place where myth and history intertwine. The fact that no one can agree on their true existence only adds to their allure. In a sense, the gardens have become as much a part of the collective imagination as they ever were a physical structure. They are a symbol of a world that was as much about dreams as it was about reality. The gardens are not just a testament to Nebuchadnezzar's power, but to the ambitions of all human beings to create something that lasts beyond their lifetimes, something that will be remembered long after they are gone. The creation of the Hanging Gardens was an act of extraordinary vision, one that combined art, science, and love. But it was also a reflection of the very nature of Babylon itself, a city of contradictions, where beauty, power, and faith all coexisted. In Nebuchadnezzar's time, Babylon was a beacon of culture and power, yet it also housed a deep spirituality that connected its people to the gods. The gardens embodied that duality. They were both a symbol of the earthly realm and a representation of the divine. And in that sense, they were not just a physical structure, they were an expression of the very soul of Babylon. The Hanging Gardens, whether real or imagined, also serve as a reminder of the fleeting nature of empires. Like all great civilizations, Babylon eventually fell, and its wonders were buried by time and neglect. But the gardens, in their mythic form, have never truly vanished.
The legend of the gardens has remained vibrant throughout the centuries, passed down through generations of storytellers, historians, and dreamers. In a way, the gardens are not just a monument to Nebuchadnezzar's reign, but a reminder that the things we create, the beauty we build, the dreams we cultivate, live on in the collective consciousness, even after the physical structures have crumbled away. In modern times, we continue to be inspired by the idea of vertical gardens, rooftop farms, and green spaces in urban areas. The hanging gardens are, in a sense, the spiritual ancestors of these modern efforts to bring nature into the heart of cities. Just as Nebuchadnezzar sought to defy the limitations of the desert by creating a lush paradise, we now strive to bring green spaces into the concrete jungles of our own cities. The spirit of the hanging gardens continues to live on in these projects, which seek to reconcile the natural world with the built environment. The gardens may have disappeared, but the idea of creating harmony between nature and civilization remains as powerful as ever. As you reflect on the gardens' influence today, you realize that their legacy is not just in the structures themselves, but in the way they continue to inspire innovation. The desire to build something that connects us to the natural world, that brings beauty and life into the midst of our cities, is something that resonates with all of us. In a world that is increasingly urbanized and disconnected from nature, the idea of creating green spaces, gardens, and oases in unexpected places has never been more important. But beyond the physical spaces we create, the hanging gardens also speak to the emotional and spiritual desire to make the impossible possible, to create something that challenges the very fabric of nature, something that rises above the ordinary and speaks to the divine. That is the true legacy of the gardens. And in a world where so much feels beyond our control, the idea of creating beauty and wonder, no matter the obstacles, is an enduring message that resonates deeply with our shared human experience. The gardens are also a reminder of the importance of love and connection. Nebuchadnezzar's decision to build such a magnificent structure for his wife, Amytis, speaks to the lengths we are willing to go for the people we care about. In many ways, the creation of the gardens was a gesture of love, a way for Nebuchadnezzar to show his queen that her happiness was worth any sacrifice. This is something that transcends time. Whether it's building a grand garden or simply creating a space where we can be together, the desire to make those we love feel cherished and special is a universal theme that endures through the ages. As you move away from the garden's imagined terraces, you begin to realize that the legacy of the hanging gardens is not just in their beauty or their historical significance, but in the lessons they offer for our own lives. The gardens remind us that there is always room for creativity, for beauty, for love. They encourage us to build something that will outlast us, to create a lasting legacy that reflects the best of who we are. Whether through art, architecture, or the spaces we create for our loved ones, the spirit of the hanging gardens lives on in each of us. The idea of the hanging gardens, whether real or imagined, serves as a lasting testament to human potential. Even if we never discover their physical remains, the gardens live on in the ways we continue to dream, to build, and to create. And perhaps in the end, that is their greatest legacy. Not the bricks or the water channels, but the inspiration they continue to provide to anyone who dares to dream of something greater than themselves.
As you step away from the imagined beauty of the hanging gardens, the world of ancient Babylon begins to fade from view. Yet the mystique of this ancient wonder lingers, as if the very idea of it still casts its shadow over us. Even though centuries have passed and the garden itself may have been lost,
The spirit of the Hanging Gardens lives on in the hearts of those who dream of creating something greater than themselves. The gardens are more than just a symbol of an ancient civilization. They represent the perennial human desire to make the impossible possible, to transform the mundane into the extraordinary. Looking back on everything you've explored, the Hanging Gardens have become a window into a distant past, a place where myth and history intertwine. The fact that no one can agree on their true existence only adds to their allure. In a sense, the gardens have become as much a part of the collective imagination as they ever were a physical structure. They are a symbol of a world that was as much about dreams as it was about reality. The gardens are not just a testament to Nebuchadnezzar's reign, but to the ambitions of all human beings to create something that lasts beyond their lifetimes, something that will be remembered long after they are gone. The creation of the Hanging Gardens was an act of extraordinary vision, one that combined art, science, and love. But it was also a reflection of the very nature of Babylon itself, a city of contradictions, where beauty, power, and faith all coexisted. In Nebuchadnezzar's time, Babylon was a beacon of culture and power, yet it also housed a deep spirituality that connected its people to the gods. The gardens embodied that duality. They were both a symbol of the earthly realm and a representation of the divine. And in that sense, they were not just a physical structure. They were an expression of the very soul of Babylon. The Hanging Gardens, whether real or imagined, also serve as a reminder of the fleeting nature of empires. Like all great civilizations, Babylon eventually fell, and its wonders were buried by time and neglect. But the gardens, in their mythic form, have never truly vanished. The legend of the gardens has remained vibrant throughout the centuries, passed down through generations of storytellers, historians, and dreamers. In a way, the gardens are not just a monument to Nebuchadnezzar's reign, but a reminder that the things we create, the beauty we build, the dreams we cultivate, live on in the collective consciousness even after the physical structures have crumbled away. In modern times, we continue to be inspired by the idea of vertical gardens, rooftop farms, and green spaces in urban areas. The Hanging Gardens are, in a sense, the spiritual ancestors of these modern efforts to bring nature into the heart of cities. Just as Nebuchadnezzar sought to defy the limitations of the desert by creating a lush paradise, we now strive to bring green spaces into the concrete jungles of our own cities. The spirit of the Hanging Gardens continues to live on in these projects, which seek to reconcile the natural world with the built environment. The gardens may have disappeared, but the idea of creating harmony between nature and civilization remains as powerful as ever. As you reflect on the garden's influence today, you realize that their legacy is not just in the structures themselves, but in the way they continue to inspire innovation. The desire to build something that connects us to the natural world, that brings beauty and life into the midst of our cities, is something that resonates with all of us. In a world that is increasingly urbanized and disconnected from nature, the idea of creating green spaces, gardens, and oases in unexpected places has never been more important. But beyond the physical spaces we create, the Hanging Gardens also speak to the emotional and spiritual desire to make the impossible possible. To create something that challenges the very fabric of nature, something that rises above the ordinary and speaks to the divine, that is the true legacy of the gardens. And in a world where so much feels beyond our control, the idea of creating beauty and wonder, no matter the obstacles, is an enduring message that resonates deeply with our shared human experience. The gardens are also a reminder of the importance of love and connection. Nebuchadnezzar's decision to build such a magnificent structure for his wife Amytis speaks to the lengths we're willing to go for the people we care about. In many ways, the creation of the gardens was a gesture of love, a way for Nebuchadnezzar to show his queen that her happiness was worth any sacrifice. This is something that transcends time. Whether it's building a grand garden or simply creating a space where we can be together, the desire to make those we love feel cherished and special is a universal theme that endures through the ages. As you move away from the garden's imagined terraces, you begin to realize that the legacy of the Hanging Gardens is not just in their beauty or their historical significance, but in the lessons they offer for our own lives. The gardens remind us that there is always room for creativity, for beauty, for love. They encourage us to build something that will outlast us, to create a lasting legacy that reflects the best of who we are. Whether through art, architecture, or the spaces we create for our loved ones, the spirit of the Hanging Gardens lives on in each of us. The idea of the Hanging Gardens, whether real or imagined, serves as a lasting testament to human potential. Even if we never discover their physical remains, the gardens live on in the ways we continue to dream, to build, and to create. And perhaps, in the end, that is their greatest legacy, not the bricks or the water channels, but the inspiration they continue to provide to anyone who dares to dream of something greater than themselves.
As the stars begin to appear in the night sky above, you find yourself reflecting on the journey you've taken through the world of the Hanging Gardens. What started as a brief exploration of one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world has transformed into something far deeper. The gardens, whether they ever existed or not, have become a metaphor for the human spirit, an enduring symbol of our desire to create beauty in even the harshest of conditions. And though the physical gardens may be lost, their essence continues to inspire us, filling us with a sense of possibility that transcends time and space. We often think of the Hanging Gardens as a product of ancient Babylon, a relic of a civilization long gone. But in reality, they belong to all of us. The idea of a lush, verdant garden rising high above the earth speaks to a universal longing that has been present throughout human history, the longing to connect with nature, to create something beautiful and lasting, and to challenge the limitations of the world around us. Whether in ancient Mesopotamia or the modern world, we are still trying to create these wonders. Just as Nebuchadnezzar sought to overcome the arid desert by building his vertical paradise, we too seek ways to bring nature into our cities, to create green spaces where there once was only concrete. In the world today, vertical gardens, rooftop parks, and urban farms are not just a passing trend, but a reflection of the same spirit that guided Nebuchadnezzar. These modern efforts may not be as grand or as mythical as the Hanging Gardens, but they are inspired by the same desire to harmonize nature and civilization. When we plant gardens in urban spaces, we are, in a sense, continuing the work that was started long ago. And like the gardens of Babylon, these new green spaces serve as both a practical solution to modern challenges and a reminder of our potential to transform the world around us. But the legacy of the Hanging Gardens is not just found in our physical landscapes. It is also woven into the fabric of our cultural consciousness.
We continued to tell stories about the gardens, to imagine what they might have looked like, and to ponder how such an extraordinary feat of engineering could have been accomplished. The mystery of the gardens, their possible existence, their design, and their ultimate fate continues to spark our imaginations, pushing us to ask bigger questions about what is possible and how far we can go in the pursuit of beauty and innovation. Perhaps it is this mystery that gives the gardens their lasting power. In a world that often seems dominated by the known, the predictable, and the tangible, the idea of the hanging gardens reminds us of the magic of the unknown. The gardens represent the gap between reality and imagination, a place where the boundaries of possibility blur and where we are free to dream. They invite us to imagine a world that could be, a world where even the harshest conditions can be transformed into something lush, vibrant, and full of life. The very fact that we still wonder about the gardens, even in the absence of concrete evidence, speaks to the timeless appeal of their mystery. But the gardens are not just about imagination. They are about action. They remind us that we are capable of creating beauty and wonder in the world, even when faced with seemingly insurmountable challenges. They inspire us to look at the spaces around us and ask, how can we make this better? How can we bring nature into our lives in a way that transforms our environment? Whether we are planting a tree, designing a green roof, or simply creating a small garden in our backyard, we are participating in the same act of creation that Nebuchadnezzar undertook so many centuries ago. The hanging gardens, in all their mystery, continue to call us to action, to build, to create, and to leave something lasting behind. As the night deepens and the world around you grows quieter, you feel a sense of peace, knowing that the spirit of the hanging gardens has not disappeared. Their influence can still be felt today in the green spaces we create, in the gardens we tend, and in the stories we continue to tell. They are not just a part of history. They are part of our shared human experience. Their legacy is not bound by time or place, but is something we carry with us, shaping the world around us in ways both large and small. And perhaps that's the most important lesson we can learn from the hanging gardens. While the physical gardens may have faded away, their essence lives on in us. The desire to create beauty, to build something that will endure, and to transform the world around us is as strong today as it was in ancient Babylon. The gardens may have been lost to time, but the spirit of the hanging gardens, a spirit of creation, of love, and of connection to nature, will continue to inspire us for generations to come. So as you take one last look at the imagined terraces, the green vines climbing ever higher, the sound of water flowing through the air, know that the legacy of the hanging gardens is not just in their physical existence, but in the ways they continue to shape the world we live in today. Whether through the green roofs of modern cities or the quiet gardens in our own backyards, the hanging gardens live on in our efforts to make the world a more beautiful, vibrant, and sustainable place. They remind us that beauty can bloom in even the most unlikely of places, and that no matter where we are or what challenges we face, we have the power to create something extraordinary.